First thing I noticed, right, was there was a huge panic and people started freezing their membership. Some people started losing their jobs. As a consequence, there was, if I was to sum it up, mental health pandemic also going on in parallel. And it's more, I would say, mental health pandemic, which is bigger than the actual viral pandemic. So first thing I did was I transferred all my classes on Zoom. Straight away I put on meditation classes, self-mastery meditation classes every Sunday, purely complementary to my student base, because they were already contributing towards being part of the community.
Welcome everybody to another Digital Rapport podcast, and on today's episode we're going to be talking about how we've been maintaining our businesses through lockdown. And I'm super excited with the amazing panel we have. And just to introduce, in the red corner we have the amazing Marilyn Devnish, international speaker, author, neuro success coach. In the yellow corner we have Sifu Lakloy, JKD trainer, author, true white collar warrior. And then in the blue corner, we have business mentor, Forbes recognized judge, TEDx speaker, and human behavior expert, Suki Wahiwala. And in the green corner, you have myself, half cyborg, half human. Now I'm only joking. I started having some future fantasy then about what it could be. But we have myself, Jitinder Palaho. And welcome everybody to this panel. And I am super excited. So guys, to begin with, I had a thought the other day about how, things are changing in such a massive way. And there are people out there who've suffered, there are people out there who've advanced and had amazing achievements. And I just wanted to get your guys' insights because of, your backgrounds. I mean, we're three amazing entrepreneurs here, doing different things in different industries. And I thought it'd be so cool if we could just share our kind of backgrounds and what we've been up to. So I suppose the first question, if we do like a round robin type of thing, was like, before this whole lockdown situation, what is your business? What were you doing? And just so that people could get to know. And we'll start off with Suki. Suki, let's start off with yourself.
I was expecting ladies first, as always, but there we are.
I thought we changed it up a bit.
Talk about variety, hey, Jitinder.
Yeah, put it.
So basically, with myself, I've got a group of companies. One majority of my company, sort of like revenues and income and establishment, comes from developments, property, investments, and stuff. And then the other side of things is, I believe, it was something personal to myself post 2006, and I decided that I wanted to create, I suppose, a support network and change for human beings and just people as a whole. And so I started looking into, I'm quite young into it comparative to that. It's only been about 12, 14 years. And I started to take a journey into helping other people grow their businesses. And it started off just by helping individuals and then, doing it for free and just saying, oh, why don't you try that? Why don't you try this? And ironically, I had a 100% hit rate. So this was quite logical to try and do something about. So my path then went on. Continued studying, as always, within the region of psychology, business and structure as well. So today, pre-COVID, let's just put it that way, we have a 5 group of companies in the arena of what we call self-help, just using that wordology there. I've partnered with both of the other 2 panelists and yourself as well, Jitinder, over the years in producing some very high-end intellectual as well as strategic programs in person, Millionaire Mentor, and with Lakloy, I've spoken on his platform with gratitude so deeply, and with yourself with Big Fanta. So we have a mentoring program, we have a mastermind program, and we also have an entry-level program, which is online university, which is the inspireduniversity.com. We have an online club, a business club, which is the Inspired Business Club, and we also have the business boardroom program, which is the way it is, and there's a whole host of them. I don't want to keep going, but that was my business beforehand. So there's an education element, and there was a physical element of property and investments, which I'll talk a bit later, I'm sure. So that's what we did: events, programs, education, and private masterminding.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Suki. Marilyn, yourself?
Yeah, for me, I was always, for the past 20 years, I've been in the personal development space in terms of coaching, training and therapy. Main thing I did was running events. So those would be in a hotel with people in a room, normally sitting right next to each other. So that was the main thing that happened throughout the year. And then in between times, that was doing the coaching sessions and therapy sessions. A lot of that actually was already online previous to that, because I've been doing online coaching, online training, and online therapy since 2005. Started off by phone because the technology just wasn't there to support it. When Skype came on stream, started to use that. And then over the years, I've got an online coaching room, webinar platform, etc. So a lot of it was that. And then there was a proportion of that which was writing for newspapers and magazines. So oftentimes people would come to me and say, hey, we're doing something on this topic. Can you contribute? Can you write something? So that was a kind of another part of it. And then in between that, there was the keynote speaking, where, go out and do a keynote for an organization in terms of rallying the troops. Many years ago, you'd call that a motivational speaker. But when I first started out, it was probably 2002. I was then saying to people, please, can you call me an inspirational speaker? And you could see the bookers going a bit like, well, what's the difference? But in my mind, there was a massive difference. And so doing that as well. So yeah, it's a kind of combination of things, but it all centers around the one word for me, which is transformation, in terms of transforming brains, lives, and minds, even if that's one mind at a time, and then creating the ripple effect. So yeah, that was me pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID. Thank you, Marilyn. And Lax, yourself?
In the daytime, I'm a consultant. I work for a trading systems company. I've been in cash equity trading systems since 1997. So that's my day job. Okay. And my selfless service comes through all the other work that I do, and it's a massive part of my life. And that part of it is the self-mastery teachings. So I'm a self-mastery specialist, and we run a martial arts school. So I teach Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. We've been running a martial arts school in City of London, around the corner to St. Paul's Cathedral, since 2007. Okay, so that's been running strong, and we've been running the personal development, or what I call the self-mastery teachings, that are inspired by martial arts and martial arts philosophy, both using movement of the body, the mind, and the spirit. So you're using all the different modalities, and that's really to cultivate self-mastery over your body, mind, and spirit, so that really you can kind of self-realize, self-actualize, and discover your true, authentic, high self. So all of that work is outside of my day job, and we've been doing that for, I would say, about 14 years. Okay, so that's been going strong, and it's been building up. We've got an online digital dojo, which is our core hub, and on there we've got all of our online services. We've got pre-recorded martial arts classes, we've got pre-recorded meditations, we've got pre-recorded 9-step modular video course, which is a black belt system to cultivate self-mastery. That's based on the physical book, Master Your Life, and that was all pre-COVID, and it's still going strong.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, everyone. I mean, this is amazing, because if you look at the backgrounds of the amazing people we have here, we've got Suki with a vast array of businesses. We've got Marilyn, personal development space. We've got Lax in corporate, as well as personal development and training and things like that. If you guys were to select one of the scenarios that used to take place, before the whole COVID situation, if you could just walk us through how that could have worked, it was going for you in your kind of core business, and then we can talk about what happened afterwards. So if we, Suki, if we come over to you on that one.
Sure. Shall we take consideration for events, live events, and maybe mentoring, coaching, that kind of thing? Or do you want to talk about the property industry?
I say let's with yourself, let's talk about property and stuff, because I know Marilyn goes into the events kind of stuff as well, and then we can just add into it. So if we talk about your kind of core property side, why not? Yeah, let's see what happened there.
Okay, so if you think about property as a whole, this is pre-COVID. Okay, so it was a very simple model. You would buy a property. I'm talking about this is just to give you a layer of conversation. You'd buy a property, and you'd go. I'll go through the breakdown of what you do to buy a property. You'd go to a estate agent or whatever, and most of my feeds come off plan anyway, meaning off conversation. But let's just say you'd go and create a meeting. You turn up and you go and view the property. And you come back and you decide whether you want the property, give them a bid. So let's just look at that side of business first. That's completely changed. So there's hardly any physical viewings of the property anymore. Now, things such as assessments of the property, for example, subsidence and challenges and issues, engineering issues, are all kind of like pre-done now because people can't physically go and check it. So they'll get your energy ratings, you'll get the efficiencies of the house, etc. All those are done in advance, so you can see all this online. And what's happened post sort of COVID is the whole of the viewing aspect of a brand new property or a purchased property has changed. You can literally walk in there. You use Google 360, people come in and they drop in the camera in the middle, and the camera literally just maps out the whole of the room. And it maps out the whole of the room, next to the room. And when you go to the software these days, you just turn around and select that room's next to this, that room's next to that, and it seams it together, a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. So what changes? Well, the whole of the Rightmove platform, Zoopla platform, all of these sales, and our own company, which is called ParkerJonesUK.com, all of these brands, we've had to jump into a completely different realm where we had to spend absolute thousands on server structures and actually being able to host our own video content on our own website, platforms and things of that sort of nature, so that when somebody comes into our platform system, goes on the property, they can physically do what we call a virtual walk around. So they can maneuver using the software that Google has already offered out in the marketplace, but they can walk through a property. Now, honestly, I think in the last, I don't tend to talk much about figures and stuff with my businesses because that's personal and private to myself, but most of the purchases we've done through the COVID period has been through a walkthrough. We've literally done it electronically, and at the important stage of, yes, this is a property we want to purchase, we physically get a feeling of it. That's when one person or somebody within the team will have basically an appointment where nobody else is in the property is vacated, and in some cases sanitizations have happened as well, so that the COVID virus can't be contracted. And literally somebody goes in, we've got PPE covering there, one person at a time, physically go around, see what you want to see and come away. And it's exactly the same for valuations. Now, if I can just go back a second, if you don't mind, if I was interested in this, but some of my clients were purchasing properties literally at the time when COVID dropped. So the offer was in, the offer was accepted, the property was visualed and everything. And literally it was the week that it was March the 26th, I think it was 2020, when the first lockdown came and said, right, okay, so for now you can't go out, full stop. If you remember, it was a slow sort of lockdown, and then it went into a higher sort of curfew level. But what happened is that week there was already a valuation booked. That means somebody physically was going to come in from the lenders and walk around a property and physically give a physical valuation. There was no substance for virtual, nothing at all. So it wasn't like, don't worry, we'll just do a desktop valuation all go around. It wasn't like that. So they had to physically come. Now, what was really surprising for myself is obviously it wasn't such a big thing that COVID was killing people. It was probably another fad, which was originally thought, this is going to breeze over in a couple of weeks, everything back to normal. And so I physically went to the property, and the valuer who came to the property was expecting. So not only was she a valuer who was expecting in a pandemic, we didn't know it was such a big pandemic in those days, but she was physically walking around and she was happy to go around the property. And I looked at her, I said to her, would you like some PPE? Would you like a mask or something? And they said, oh, okay, yeah, that'd be lovely. I said, how many properties have you visualed this week? Have you done? Because I've done like 3 yesterday and 3 the day before and whatever it was. I said, you should be carrying some PPE around at least, at least have a mask for yourself, because we don't really know what's happening. You're expecting. And then she really appreciated that level of care. My point is that that's how the business had to adapt. It was like everything just fell apart. There was no business. Everything froze for 3 months. I mean, I can remember being in May and thinking, what are we going to have to do now to get these properties sold, purchased, rented? Because we couldn't go and do rents, we couldn't do anything, because it was like, no, you can't do physical meets at all. Now, since then, and I'm sure everyone will talk about this, but we've evolved. But boy, has it been a crash course of a year of bumping into walls and tables and whatever else you could think about, with big bruises and cuts, learning, adapting, and making do. I mean, look at us now. Once upon a time, there was nobody on this a platform of Zoom or even podcasting, which is going to end up being as well. But look at us now. You know, it's second nature. Last thing I want to share. I mean, just in this last month alone, I did 280 Zoom calls, because I record them all and they were all on my cloud and they were waiting to be deleted. That just tells you the amount of impact that Zoom has seriously had on us. That's a hell of a lot of Zoom calling, whether they're for 15 minutes or an hour. I just don't use the phone anymore. That's what life's happened with us, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Suki. Marilyn?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to 2002, actually, because that will set the scene for what it was like pre-COVID. In March 2002, I was in Minneapolis doing my photo reading instructor training with Dr. Paul Shealing. So had we not been in lockdown, I would have been running a photo reading workshop this month to celebrate the 19-year anniversary. So that would, for me, this Friday today. So if I was running it today, which I probably would have been, I would now be getting the final suitcase ready with all of the props and the books and all of that sort of stuff and the toys and the games. I'd be going round to the hotel. I normally arrive at the hotel around 10:30 to do all the setup. So I'm getting all the books laid out on the tables, the playbooks, the notepads, the sketch pads, putting all the colored pens out, putting all the colored posters around the wall, getting the laptop set up, making sure the slides are working, making sure I've got all all the props are.
That was easy.
All the props are laid out and all of that sort of stuff. So all of that would have been going on this morning right now. And I normally finish setting up around about 12:30. I then leave the hotel, go to Marks and Spencer's to spend a couple of £100 on fruit and cakes and biscuits, because that was a big part of when we have a break, everyone's what I call breaking bread. So we're kind of eating together. And then once I dropped the stuff back at the hotel, because I wanted it as fresh as I possibly could, I would then go home, have my lunch, get dressed, go back to the hotel. So I get back to the hotel about 2:30 in the afternoon, and attendees are normally there sitting because we start at 3. So they'll all be there sitting and chatting as though they've known each other forever and they've only just arrived. And then at 3 o'clock, we open the doors, they all come in, and depending on the size of the room, they've either got a desk to themselves, so that would be almost like social distancing, or they're sitting in rows of 2, rows of 3, or rows of 6. So, they're all kind of lined up. And then we would spend 2.5 days, the equivalent of 21 hours in that hotel room together, learning, playing, eating, meditating, reading at 25,000 words per minute. And we would then conclude, officially at 6:30 on the Sunday, having started at 3 on the Friday. And sometimes we're there till 10 o'clock, not because I've overrun, people just want to stay and chat. And then eventually I will get to tidy up, pack everything down and make my way home. So that would be a typical kind of event had we not been in lockdown. That would have probably been happening today to celebrate the 19-year anniversary. So yeah, I would be in a room. And of course, at the minute the door opens, it's hugs all round, so we have to have that half an hour window to do the hugs and to do the, oh my God, so lovely to see you. And I can even picture people's faces, because oftentimes there are people coming that know me, and if they've been in an online membership group, they know the other people, and then you see someone coming who doesn't know anyone, and I'm like, here we go. Within like 10 minutes, hugs all round, oh my God. And so it's just the energy and the vibe of that is just amazing. And so that's what it would have been like had we not been in lockdown.
Sorry, Marilyn, what's a hug?
I know, but seriously, Suki, that's serious, because now people are even scared to look you in the eye and I've been in groups where they're debating whether or not they'll just, you know, elbow or, you know, wave from the distance, and are they going to go back to hugging? And then I'm in other groups who are saying, oh my God, I can't wait to give everyone a hug. So that's a whole conversation that's going to start unfolding at the end of this month, I'm sure.
I shall start relearning what a hug is.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Marilyn. Lax, do you want to just share on that as well? What was your business like before kind of COVID?
Before COVID. All right. So very similar to Marilyn, actually. So I'll give you an example of martial arts classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Always get there early. So I'd be at the studio good 15, 30 minutes before class. Students would turn up early, knowingly, because they want to chat to me beforehand. So, you know, like Marilyn said, hugs and high fives and all the rest, you know, kind of really everybody's, and we're in the heart of the city, right? So most of my students are corporate professionals, white collar warriors as well. And so, you know, after a long day, you know, we're talking, you know, about 6:45, 7 o'clock, because the classes start at 7:15 in the evening. You know, some people are kind of deflated or, you know, just kind of overwhelmed with the stress of the day. But the moment they go in there, bang, everything changes, right? And, you know, some people might be a little bit kind of like under the weather from the day and the toll of the week or whatever it might be. But everybody's energy starts lifting everybody up, and there's banter, people playing pranks on each other. I'm usually the one doing the pranks, all right? And we're just having, you know, have a good laugh. We'll get into the class, and again, you know, people will come in. I'm not so old school in the sense that if people come late, you know, they get 100 press ups and they get punished for it. It's more like, well, I appreciate that they made it there, purely because of the setting that we're in. We're in the heart of the city, and, you know, livelihoods, work, and so on kind of have to have an equal amount of waiting. So you got to take these things into consideration. So sometimes people turn up a bit late, you know, again, you know, we might be a bit jokingly like play along with like their late arrival. So we might goof around with them, get them to do some kind of like, you know, exercises, warm-ups, or use them as what I call stunt bunnies, right? So that'll be their kind of like prank for being a bit late. And then we'd train, you know, would do the warm-up, we do a pre-workout stretch, we'll go into our main kind of teachings for the day, and it's full contact, right? So we're literally, you know, striking and defending and counter-attacking against one another, and it's hands-on. And the thing is, the energy in the room is highest you can get it, right? It's maximum level. And, you know, people, you know, at the end of the night, you know, we try and maximize our workouts, our classes, and people want more. They want to speak to me and afterwards, so give them advice afterwards. And maybe it could be like to do with the martial arts, or it could be to do with life and the whole gambit basically. And then you know, everybody leaves on a high. And quite often they're like, Sifu, you know, should we go out for a meal and so on? So we do go out for meals as groups, and, you know, we'll get like, you know, 15, 20 people go out for a meal. If somebody's birthday, you know, we'll end up down in the local Nando's or a pub or whatever. And, you know, we just have a good laugh. And that's what people live for. They love it. And even if I personally have had an intense day in the office, you know, I may turn up to the dojo completely, you know, worn out, but by the end of it, I'll be like a fresh new man, fresher than the moment I woke up, right? Fresher than having a lie-in on a weekend, right? It's unbelievable. And it's that love and connection, even though we're practicing martial arts, it's a family. And that's really what it was like before COVID. So yeah, it's just amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And that's just the classes, not the events, not the seminars and the workshops.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. I mean, Suki, I know you do kind of live events type of stuff as well. Do you want to quickly share on that and how things were, and then we can go into possibly about what suffered, and then we could talk about what changed and what you guys are doing now. So so do you want to share a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, actually, there's nothing much more I can ditto both what Marilyn and Lack have said. But an event would have been very similar, very exactly kind of very similar to what Marilyn was showing with the actual trajectory of what goes on. But as a whole, our methodology that I share is the Synegus Method, and I've been honoured to share so many of this of our methodology. I think all four of us here are actually very good friends before we're actually professionals in our own arena. I've done work with yourself, Jatinder, as you know, within the big founder and the digital Rapport arena, and also worked with Lax, obviously under the Marshall Mind Power MMP, and I've done a talk with you. I think I've spoken twice at your events, I think, and with Marilyn, we've actually delivered a whole complete concept called the Millionaire Mentor Day, which was very successful. Actually, we did 2 seatings of that, very well done. And in those days, what we used to do was actually invite people, and this is kind of something that I think, if I can share, something that Marilyn actually instigated originally. It was her idea, that she said that it would be kind of really cool under the Millionaire Mindset Guide was actually open up your house. And I had to think about that long and hard, actually, because I'm a very private person. I don't really open my house out to everybody or anybody. And one of the key reasons why I did is because the people who were interested in studying with us at that time, this is to give you an example who they were, they're already known to us. There was nobody kind of like fresh. There was like some of the people who came that I knew, some of the people Marilyn knew personally, so it wasn't really a problem. So it was kind of like friends. And I think those things have gone out the window. So for example, I opened up our home, there was a big PR structure that Marilyn went through, and everybody we invited, I think we ended up with about 12 in every seating, didn't we, Marilyn? With I think it was best part of the event was divided between both of us, and we were closing, I think 90. I think there was only one person in each room who genuinely didn't sign up because of affordability, not because they didn't want to come on board. So it was a highly successful program, but that was in my home, and I don't think those things ever happen anymore.
We were on those sofas, the sofas that you guys can see behind Suki. That's where everyone would sit next. So you got some people sitting as 2, some sitting as a group of 3. There are a couple of armchairs, but that's the room that we were sitting in.
And can you remember we had the television slightly a bit more towards the center of the room, and we cleared up, we created a desk, a stage in the end of one of my drawing rooms. So I sat there, we physically created a stage, and then we also pulled the chairs forward and had hot seats, which people paid a premium for. And those hot seats were much more interactive, what I would call today when we kind of get a bit more spiritual people and start getting very close to how to strategically help them and move themselves forward. So those sort of moments, I think that era, I'm not quite certain will ever come back, where I'd have a ton of people in my home anymore. Not for a few years anyway. Does that make sense? So I think that was a real exclusive period of life, and we did so many things. Like we went over towards stately homes and had evening meals, and like what Lack was just saying, I think every time we have an event, there's what we call, I suppose you could say, Team Synegus, the people who hang out at the end and they just stay, and we even after the business boardroom mastermind events every single month, which is next week actually, there used to be a hangout. Something we'll talk about how we've adapted all those businesses, but there used to be a hangout, and we used to go and have meals, so go and have dinners, and Tinder, Lack, and yourself, Marilyn, have all been part of that. So I suppose the training element was a successful part of that group of 5 companies, which is the education development, and then obviously the middle in the section would be the actual masterminding control directly, and then the third section was writing and creating and talking about stuff, and there we are. So it was a ditto, principally the same thing, but I don't think I'll ever open my home for at least another couple of 3 years. And if you go back to last year around April time, because I'm an analytical type guy, I would go through stats, and I was looking forward, and I did all the research I needed to do. I had about a dozen plus white papers and structures where these sort of pandemics and how they ran over in SARS and in the African states, also in the Asian states, Hong Kong, etc. And they all showed an average recovery of 3.5 years to 4 years. So I made a clear assumption right at the start that this is going to be 2023 plus before we do that. So that's the answer. The answer for me, I'd say genuinely, if it helps anybody who's listening, that was an era, I think it was a golden era that we might not necessarily get back exactly the same, as people have now become much more adept to the VoIP, and I'm sure that's where you're going to go with the next conversation. I hope that helps.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, you know what? I think it'd be really cool. I mean, we don't really hear a lot of the time people talk about the kind of hardships that they've, gone through as well. And I think it's quite important if we can maybe just share something that's been a challenge or suffered the most in your business, that kind of thing. And then the next round we could talk about how we adapted and changed, kind of thing. So if I go to Marilyn, if you'd like to just share, something challenging you've gone through or something that suffered in your business and you thought, how do I go about changing this? Well,
now this is going to sound really, really, and this comes back to the conversation where we were not yet recording officially, where I said, oh my gosh, that could be a conversation for the future. Because as someone who's been doing online coaching, online training and online therapy since 2005, so that's 15 years before the pandemic, where everyone was online, you would think they'd be like, whoa, yeah. What I have found is I spent 15 years pioneering the idea, because my biggest challenge was getting people to believe that you could effectively work online, getting people to believe that you could have exactly the same energy, if not more so, in a workshop online. So I've been doing that for nearly 2 decades. When the pandemic hit, suddenly after a couple of Zooms, everyone was an online expert. So now, rather than going, woohoo, finally everybody's woken up to the idea, here I am, I found that I was reading profiles, and you read the profile like, wow, that's amazing. And then you realize I've only actually done 3 or 4 events, not 3,000. So that was really interesting. And another thing, and Suki will, I'm sure I'm going to have to look closely when I look at his face when I say the next thing. One of the things that I found that organizations said, oh, I'd love you to come and do a keynote or a workshop, or there's a lot happening with diversity and inclusion with what happened with George Floyd. And that's something I've been doing since 2003 in terms of workshops and speaking on that subject, inclusion, diversity, conflict resolution. And I remember I really had to kind of sit with that and go, this world has gone upside down, because one of the big organizations that approached me via someone else had said basically, oh, can you ask her if she can do it for free? And I went and looked online, and they're worth $6.9 billion. And that was just the founder of the company, not the organization. And so I found a lot of that happening. And the rationale was, well, because business has frozen. And as Suki said, there was that 3-month period where everybody's just sitting going, there's a meme of a little girl when, if you type in like confused, if you want a GIF or a GIF, there's a little girl and she's just like going, it was like that. So businesses are all in that place. So the rationale for that was, well, business is frozen. We don't know what's happening. So therefore our budgets are frozen and we don't have as much budget. So that was really challenging. And I had several of those conversations where I'm very excited. Yes, I'm going to go in and do some internal training because I'm a corporate trainer. I'm a leadership development trainer. Again, I've been doing that since 2003 when I became a management consultant and Prince 2 project manager. Again, been doing all of that online as well. And organizations were all coming and said, oh yeah, we'd love to do. Oh, we haven't got budget. Oh, haven't got budget for that. Oh, haven't got budget for that. So that was challenging. And some of them I just said, I'm really sorry, I don't have the capacity to do that. For 1 or 2, if there were people that I knew they were friends, then I would maybe do just a short keynote. But I'd say that was the most challenging piece in terms of people freezing everything, but still wanting you to deliver a service, which takes time and effort and energy to do and to deliver. Just because I'm not having to now travel to your location, it does not diminish from what I'm about to deliver for you, because when I'm doing an event, there's anything up to a week that will go into designing that event to make sure it fits your needs. What are the challenges of the organization? Where are your staff? What do you need? What's our outcome? How do we want to leave people? As Lak was saying, and Suki, and I'm sure yourself, Jatinder, you know it as well from all these events, people leave completely transformed. That's not an accident. That takes planning. It takes strategizing. It takes what I call the energetic component as well, of kind of seeing that timeline. And all of that became even more invisible, because now people perceive that you just turn up on Zoom or Teams or whatever you're using. And I'm like, no, that's the end result of all of the work. So there's almost had to be a re-education piece. And another thing that I noticed is that organizations were then saying, well, can you deliver this workshop? Yeah, no problem. Oh, can we have we want lifetime access to the recording. I was like, hold on a minute. If I was coming into your organization to deliver a leadership development workshop, communication skills, finance for non-financial managers, project management, whatever, you name it, in emotional intelligence, I would turn up 2-day Friday, deliver that training to all of you. If you couldn't make it, I need to come back next Friday, deliver it again. Whereas they are expecting that you're going to deliver this training because it's recorded. They can now have the recording for everyone. And I'm like, hold on a minute, how does that model work? That's not the way it works in the real world. So now I'm re-educating some of my clients as well and saying, hold on, think about this. You're going to deliver the training once. They're going to pay you sometimes nothing or a reduced fee, because the perception is because it's online, it should be less than. And now they want to use that training forever, and you're never involved in the loop. So it was, and seriously, a conversation I've had to reinstigate, because this happened in probably, I think it was around 2015, 16. I did my first hybrid event where we were running a live workshop, so people in the hotel, and we were live streaming around the world. So now this was with the 4K camera, because the 4K camera was the thing of the moment. So what I didn't realize, I did some costings. I thought, okay, that's fine. Oh my gosh, I made the online event £100 less than being in the room. Let me tell you the truth. Let me tell you the truth. And then I had somebody complain that it wasn't free. Well, why do we have to pay? It's online. And once I started getting all the bills, the costings, because it's not just hiring the 4K camera, you need the cameraman to operate it. And then he needs to edit the footage. And then we need to temporarily host it. And then I need to build a website. Let me tell you something. And for everyone who's listening, who's under the illusion about online training, that live stream was 10 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times more expensive than having people sitting in the hotel, drinking the tea and coffee that I paid for, eating the fruit and the cakes and the biscuits from Marks and Spencer's. It was 10 times more expensive. And Suki touched on something earlier. He threw in, it costs thousands to do all the 360, etc. People don't host your videos and stuff for free. So even if I let you have access to the platform, I'm paying for the hosting behind the scenes. So with a hotel, I pay once, run the event, off we go, have a nice time. With online hosting, I'm now paying forever to host that for you. So those were some of the biggest challenges that I faced in terms of, hold on, wait a minute. So it's been and I say it's been because it's still ongoing. We're not out of the woods of that yet. But it's that whole, I think, re-education piece. And I know one of the, a lot of people are now talking about Zoom fatigue. That's never, ever something I've experienced with my online trainings. People always say it feels as though they're in the room. And we did 21 straight hours the first time I ran the photo reading online. That was probably about 4 years ago, where I did the full certification class. At the end of it, people were buzzing. They were on fire and going, oh my God, this is amazing. And the feedback was only, and how would we improve it? Oh, I wish it was longer. 21 hours online. That's crazy. And again, those things don't happen by accident. They happen by design. And now, so it's a re-education process to get people to realize there is a skill and a technique to it, even though it looks easy. Pull on a top, sit on front of a camera. There's more to it than that. So that's still one that's it's reformed itself, but still now working on that piece in a slightly different way. So I'd say those have been some of the biggest challenges.
I just want to add something to that. I really have to. Honestly, an average streaming event. So I've got a partnership with an organization which does online global streaming. It's between 7 and 10K is what the actual cost is. Just so everybody knows real figures. These aren't just pretend figures. If you were doing a proper broadcast, you need to have a broadcaster, producer. You need to have multi-platform, devices that basically stream. You may be looking at what you think is Zoom, but it's going into other systems, which then turn around and specialize within YouTube streaming, specialize within Insta streaming, within LinkedIn streaming nowadays is what's coming, and also things like Facebook streaming as well. So all of that is an average between 7 and 10K. So we do that professionally. I have a partnership with somebody who physically delivers it for them. So I'm spot on with what you're saying there with Marilyn. And there's one more thing I just want to bring up. Sorry, apologies, Lack, I'm taking your time a little bit, but it's really important to suggest that people in times of hardship, we found post-April onwards, people had this understanding due to what we call manufactured consent, when the world was told that everybody was becoming much more heart-centered and becoming this way around. Obviously, the reality was true, but we only tend to believe it when we read it in a newspaper or watch it on news or something of that sort of nature for some silly reason. But the point I'm trying to say is that when that actual movement came out, people started to realize that we should be paying for things. Up until that moment, people were in fight and flight. And I talk about the DCIS, the impact code, the phases of, I call it EPOC, the emotional and energetic phases of lockdowns or energetic phases of any change. And the dominancy comes in first when it's fight or flight. That's why all the dustbin, the bin rolls and everything came into the bin rolls and stuff like that. Everyone over purchased things. But my point being, is no one really gives a toot about anybody in times of crisis until the consensus tells us this. And that's why the $6.9 billion net worth individual was not willing to sign off anything to pay you even a penny for something that would have cost you 10x to deliver that at Marilyn, because they're not interested. They're looking for any excuse to lock down the budgets. I'll be honest with myself, I was very lucky through that period of time. I think just want to add this in before we move to Lack, if you don't mind, that there's the program called Millionaire Roundtable, and what they do basically is they select individuals to speak across the board, etc. And they selected me for quite some time to speak at one of their. I was booked pre-lockdown for around July. No, actually it wasn't. It was actually August, and they bought it a whole month forward. It cost them $128,000. to stream an event which would have cost them $50 to deliver physically. That's exactly what I'm giving the real figures. And what we did is there was 6,500 attendees over 2 days. And I was one of the keynote speakers there, and we delivered. They paid exactly the same. They did not cut the corners, didn't anything. They were the most best people I've ever dealt with. They basically prepaid, pre-organized, contracts were in place 6 months in advance. Payment was in 30 days prior. There was never a haggle, never a hassle. There's your fee. What do you want for it? This is my fee. No problem. Everything was straightforward. And when it turned into an online facilitation, even though it cost them so much more, they didn't haggle, they didn't freeze the prices, didn't say, oh, we want you to do this, we want you to do that. Sorry, we can't confirm this. They stuck to it absolutely. So I've got nothing better to talk about an organization like that, who are there supporting international IFAs, independent financial advisors across the globe. They're the largest organization that cover them. But that's the kind of stuff that really inspires me to see the positive energies of what possibly came out of this COVID lockdown, where people still stuck to their word and they weren't just trying to nail you down and screw you down with this stuff. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Sakil. Over to you, Lex. And what kind of challenges and what suffered in business? What happened for yourself?
I think one of the key things that is universal as a consequence of the pandemic is that as a martial artist, one of the things that we're trying to cultivate mastery over is our primal self. Okay, now our kind of most carnal and core essence of our human being is all down to survival. Okay, so when the pandemic kicked off, it is kind of hilarious as well at the same time. And I'll give you an example that everybody's familiar with this whole rush for toilet rolls, right? And God knows, right? Anyway, so I remembered I was watching this clip of this newscaster who was just interviewing people outside the supermarket, and this guy comes out with all these toilet rolls, these massive bags, right? And she goes, excuse me, sir, can I just ask you a quick question? Why have you bought all these toilet rolls? And he goes, I don't know. Everybody else is buying them, so I thought I'll get some as well, right? And, to my mind was, I was thinking, well, I don't know, what the fuck are you going to do with all these toilet rolls when you haven't got any food? You won't have anything to wipe because nothing's going to be coming out. Have you actually got any food first? Right? Stupid, right? The problem is, the nation, right, for those people that don't have mastery over their mind, went into panic mode and went straight into survival mode, right? And that survival mode brings the worst out of people. Honestly, I have seen the worst of humankind. But on the flip side, I have also seen the best of humankind, because there are those that go into survival mode and there are those that go into servitude mode. And these are the people that say, look, I got you. Don't worry. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to help you. There's no need to panic. There's no need to, become all fearful. We're going to calm you down and we're going to figure this out together. Okay. And I wrote a chapter in one of my books on this, and I called it All for Nothing, because really it's interesting, because the government was just saying, look, guys, there's this virus spreading around. Just stay at home, right? This was your one chance, right, to save the world by sitting on your couch and watching Netflix, right, for 3 fucking months. That's all you had to do. There was nothing complicated about it. And everyone started panicking. Everybody all of a sudden wanted to go out, even when they hated their jobs. Now they wanted to go out. And it's like, well, our human mind, the human condition is so fickle. And this is why self-mastery is important, is that when you tell somebody you can't do this, you want to do that. So if you have to go to work and you hate your job, and then you said, look, then you're told, hey, stay at home, we'll give you 80% of your pay, right? Watch TV, eat, drink, sleep. That is it, right? And make sure you got enough toilet paper to finish your job. And then, after that washes through, right? All of a sudden, they all want to go rushing out to go back to work again. And all of a sudden, they now realize they've got all these people they need to meet, right? So, and then when it flips back, then it's going to be, oh, I want to stay at home. I really enjoyed that. The problem is the human condition is fickle. You're always going to want what you can't have. And I think this survival mode, the servitude mode, really for me sums up the whole thing, right? And it's which one of those two are you going to feed, right? Are you going to feed your fears, right? The survival mode, are you going to feed that and become paranoid and lose your marbles over this and worry yourself into a frenzy and silently die, right? Without having lived? Or are you going to step up, right? And help people, right? Help others. Forget about yourself, right? When you help others, all your worries disappear. And all of a sudden now everything changes.
So Lex, how did you adapt to that? How did you, you must have seen it happening around you, all that kind of stuff.
So the first thing I noticed, right, was we did have a massive student base, right? And what we noticed was there was a huge panic, and people started freezing their memberships, and some people started losing their jobs, right? And so there, as a consequence, there was, if I was to sum up, mental health pandemic also going on in parallel, and it's more, I would say, mental health pandemic, which is bigger than the actual viral pandemic. So first thing I did was I transferred all my classes on Zoom, and straight away I put on meditation classes, self-mastery meditation classes every Sunday. There was the odd Sunday that I needed a break, but just purely complementary to my student base, because they were already contributing towards being part of the community and learning. There's that surrender. You have to have a surrender. So what Marilyn has just said is spot on. I mean, Here's the thing, right? Buddha, right? If you wanted to be a disciple of Buddha, the first thing he would ask you, or would tell you is, you can leave anytime, right? We'll take you in, but you can leave anytime. But if you want to join our teachings and our community, then you have to do one thing. You have to shave your hair. Well, why do you have to shave your hair? And the reason for that is initiation, okay? Why? Because initiation is you shave your hair off because one, it signifies you letting go of your ego and your identity, or your ego identity, right? Second thing, you're surrendering something of yourself, right? You're willing to give something up, right? To gain something, which is really all a process of losing a whole bunch of stuff, really, right? So you've got to do that. My members had already done that by signing up and staying members, right? So that's their initiation, right? So I served them because they were still committed to me, and therefore I am committed to them through my servitude. And that was really the key way how I helped. And I'll be honest with you, I would say there's a handful of people there that were tipping over the edge. And when I mean tipping over the edge, that, you know, they would be gone if you just didn't have that support for them. And I think it's been transformational, as all the work has been over the years. But essentially, I think this time it's actually been saving lives. And yeah, it's just, you've got to really maintain that space yourself. You've got to cultivate that mastery in yourself so that you've got something to give to them.
Awesome.
So on the Sundays that I don't give them, guess what? I'm recharging myself, so I've got more to give. And I always say, you know, you give from the overspill of abundance from your own cup, right? Not from your own cup, because you'll end up depleted in the end. And I think that's how I've kind of gave back in this respect.
That's awesome, Lex. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, this is a cool lead into that. The next bit, then, like, you know, how have you guys adapted to that? What are you guys now doing in business that's different? And what's worked for you guys? You know, if we have a conversation around that, if we go to Marilyn.
Yeah, absolutely.
How have you adapted and changed?
Before I do that, Suki, is there anything else you wanted to add about challenges? Because I know you came in at the end of mine. Did you want to say anything more about challenge before we go into the next phase?
I would love to, if you can. Thank you.
But that's up to Jatinder. But I was
it's cool.
We kind of segued a little bit, and then we went the other.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think the challenge that was happening at the time is, if I can talk a little bit about epoch, which is energetic phases of change, is something that I've written within the Synegus Method, and it kindly sits upon many different psychologies of energetic fields and conversation. But we have kind of like 4 phases, if anybody will just understand that. This is, I spoke about this through my online shows, which is called the Daily Tips Show. I can't remember exactly what episode it was, but it's on my YouTube channel. But in principle, it's a very simple understanding that we have an impact code, which is a human psychology understanding, which is the dominant energy, which we know is the person who looks for big picture, fight, flight, get over there, win, win, win. I'm going very undetailed, by the way, and that particular character is undetailed as well. Then you have the I energy, which is the disc, basically, the I, the influencer energy, which is very much around the freedoms of the world and variety and starting lots of topics and not necessarily finish, but that's not wrong in their world. It's maybe wrong by somebody else's standard, everybody's own individual perception of that. But there are individuals who are very amazing starters. They don't like detail, neither does the D. The D and the I are both extroverted energies. Then you've got the second phase, which is the introverted energy, sitting on the stability energy, which is the S, which stands specifically for individuals who are very heart-centered and caring for other people, but they are also anything you want them to be. They can be very, very assertive if it's not about themselves. They have a lesser level of understanding for themselves, but more importantly, what I'm trying to get is there is a very caring energy and a very nurturing energy. The final, the C, the compliancy, is very much about strategy, structure, planning, process, and putting things in order, making sure things stacks up properly and it's done to a standard. So, you know, those are the kind of the 4 areas, but we call it an impact code, which is where the epoch sits. The energetic phases of any lockdown and change on the planet, in your own home, in your own world, or in the universe at large, is the first is the fight or flight, the dominancy energy. It's like, okay, we don't know what's going to happen. I bet we'll go and grab some more toilet paper, and we'll go and grab that and sit at home. And as we were just talking on the chat, we'll pray to the toilet paper gods and grab some and sit at home. So it's fight or flight. It's me. It's about me. It's my world. I don't want to fall short. I shared before that I actually had an individual who was a really soft character, but somehow he had become this lion roar of an individual. Went out there and bought 5 bottles of I think it was 4 liters of milk, and sat it in his house. And literally, ironically, how the universe works is I got a text from him saying, "Oh yeah, I've stocked up on milk, I've stocked up on all the food and toilet paper." I said, "Great, good that you got the toilet paper, but let's just have a look at this." We're making a joke of this, but our heart across everybody genuinely goes out to everybody who's been affected by COVID and any deaths that have happened as opposed to this. So I'm very, very sorry to hear those energies, and we love that. Our love goes out to them. But he was just saying that I said, "Oh, right, great. So how many bottles of milk did you pick up?" And he goes, "Oh, I've got 5. I've got 6 bottles of these 4-liter bottles of big tubs of milk." I said, "Great. How many do you actually go through?" And he said, "Oh, well, I probably don't even ever buy the 4-liter. I'll probably buy myself maybe a 2-liter or a 1-liter, and it lasts a week." I said, "Great. So what's the sell-by date on those milk bottles?" And I said, "Maybe you've overkilled that a little bit. I mean, are you actually going to drink bad milk if it goes off?" And I said, "Did you ever think about the fact that maybe there's a family out there who actually can't get their milk anymore because there's no more being produced right now because it was a surprise? Could it be possible that you could have taken something out of somebody else's mouth?" And when that moment came down, it was like, oh, goodness, what an idiot. He actually kept 1 bottle of 4 liters. He took all of the other 5 bottles and he went and literally walked down off his own accord, went to a food bank and physically gave them the milk there because he felt so uncomfortable with what he had actually done out of his fight or flight. So he went and physically gave it over there, and he did the same with anything else he'd bought extra as well. I didn't actually ask him about his toilet paper, but that's up to him. But my point here was that the next phase is what we call the compliant phase, is when we start to, it doesn't go as DISC, by the way, it's the impact codes, DCIS. So the next one is the compliant phase. When we sit there and have a look at, okay, what's actually going on? Let's take heed. Let's see if we can put some kind of sense to this. Is there a strategy, a function? Is it logical? What are we actually doing? We start to look for a plan in the process. Then, we start thinking about, if you hark back to last year, you had the fight-flight, which lasted at least 8 weeks, maybe even, coming on to 10. But then all of a sudden things started to fold. Every household went into this phase of, we don't need any more of that. We've got plenty. We go through this much harmony at home. We're good at home, as both Marilyn and Lack were both saying, and yourself, Jatinda. Everyone just sat at home and watched Netflix. So they realized they were consuming more food, but whatever it was they had come to some kind of a plan, and they had come to an acceptance of understanding that this is the way it is, and there's no massive fear if you stay in your house, so stay isolated. There's the plan. So they wanted the plan structure. Then it moves into the phase of what we call rejection, the I energy, which is DC, but then it's I. The I walks into a space where it's rejection, it's freedom. I've had enough of this. I can't handle this anymore. I'm cooped up in my home. I need to get out. I need to meet people. I need fresh air. I need all these sort of things. And that's when the phase of all the, if you think about all the actual protests and whatever the protests were, and it's taking nothing away from BLM mission and principles, which were absolutely right, but all the protests, no, I think this is all a hoax. I think this is all of a sudden that started kicking off, which is basically the deflection, it's the freedom, and we need that back in our life. And no, we demand ourselves back to normal, which is all that energy of I. And then what happens after that, it sort of settles down and we start to accept and understand that there could be a new norm. Yeah, we can take a heed of our own principle, which is the last energy, which is the S energy, the warm, soft-hearted energy. The maternal, we start looking at nurture. We start thinking, okay, so if this is our life for at least the next year, let's make it the best way we can possibly be. The spiritual energy, the entities come through. Now, that actual process, the flow that I've given in Epoch, the phases, comes in a micro rotation, a mid-rotation, or we could say micro or macro rotation, or a meta-rotation, doesn't matter. So if you looked across the globe, every country was going through its own DCIS at its own phase. Every city was going through DCIS in its own phase. Every village or street was going through its own DCIS. Every household independently was going through a DCIS, and every individual was going through a DCIS as well. So we all went through the same phase of, come on, I've got to look after the family, let's do this. Actually, no, look, come on, let's just put a plan in place. Don't go out, don't do this, go out at this time, come back at this time, let's do the shopping first thing in the morning, etc., etc., etc. And then it went into a phase of, look, I need a bit of freedom. I'm just going to sit outside, I don't care, on my own grounds. And I'm going to go for a walk, I'm going to go and do this, I'm going to exercise, and then come back and say, okay, I've done all those. Let's just settle down. Where's Netflix again? And the whole process, what I'm trying to get at is that was an independent, individual journey, exercised at a different level with each member of your family, exercised at a different member of your extended family, and a different level as in your community that you were hanging out with, and then at a different level within your city, and then went into national, international, and so forth. So I hope that helped a little bit. Thank you for reminding me, Marilyn.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. It's very relevant, because if people understand and even tap into a little bit of what you've just said, it'll be so much relief for them. Like I say, the element of self-mastery comes in. So thank you for sharing that, Suki. So if we go around now, it's like, what you're doing now, what's changed, and just share a bit about that. So if we go to Marilyn.
Yeah, what's changed? A bit like Lack was saying, what happened then was all these various groups popped up and all of these various committees. And because of my background and what I do with mental health and emotional health and well-being, there were lots of requests, well, can you do this? Can you do that? So I volunteered on a number of different committees. And a bit like Suki was saying earlier, in terms of the number of Zoom hours, that then shot through the roof. And there'll be times where I was volunteering for 15 hours a day. This committee, and then all sorts of things were going on. So that's been very different in terms of, and some of those are with the local council, and they have various groups and offshoots, doing lots of talks and presentations in people's groups. If they're saying, oh, can you come and talk about this? Can you talk about that? So yeah, I did a lot of those for free. Just to kind of help people out and share some of the information that I've got, and see if we can kind of create a difference in people's lives and universes. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in post-lockdown, because I know I would not have time to go to all of those meetings if I was having to be at different locations. There just physically would not be the time. Whereas on Zoom, I can just leave one meeting. Sometimes I've got 5 minutes to run to the bathroom and run back to my seat. Then I can enter another meeting. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out post lockdown. And also I was even more mindful, because for the last 20 years, I've been putting myself in my diary in terms of, well, people say, hey, what are you doing on that day? I'm sorry, I'm not free. What do you need? Unless it was backstage passes to Jack Savarotti and all the rest of it, I'm not interested, because I'm having a day off. It's just me and Columbo or whatever I'm doing, Star Trek, so that's always been a feature. However, I could reprioritize those if something came up. Since we've been in lockdown, that's become even more paramount, because for me to have the capacity to be turning up to 10 different committee meetings to talk about mental health and give my input on equality and what's happening in the Black community and what can we do about this, and hey, Jim McManus, the head of health, I need to talk about the virus, and For me to do all of that, I had to be even more mindful of looking after myself. And so there were a few things that I scaled back on. For those who watch such things, I started getting messages from people saying, are you okay? Haven't seen you as much on Facebook, haven't seen your Facebook lives. The reason for that was for me to do everything I was doing in terms of the volunteering and all the rest of it and the speaking, and do all of my usual activities, which I do just for the fun of it. I'm like, I'm going to have to do some reprioritizing. And that doesn't matter as much, isn't as important as being able to be over here helping these groups and doing this and doing that and doing stuff in the community. So there are a few things that have to take a back seat. And for me to make a decision, how do I want to reprioritize my time and my energy? And I spent so much time last year of my own making, because in September 2019, I did a meditation about the year ahead and said, okay, where's the focus going to be for me in the world? And the voice said, you need to speak and write about remote and flexible working. I've never written about remote. I've been working in the field since 2003, but that's behind closed doors. I'm often in central and local government and secure locations. So yeah, I write a lot of white papers, I build, intranets and all the rest of it. Never, ever, ever spoken about it publicly. By October 2019, the first remote working article came out. Last year, I wrote over 100 articles. Places like Forbes and The Guardian and The Times and Huffington Post and all the rest of it. That took a lot of time and energy. So that then became a much bigger piece of what I do. So if I were to do a pie chart, pre and now, they would be what I'm doing is similar, but the slices of the pies have changed. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Suki's put in duvet days. So yeah, duvet days have been in my diary for the last 20 years. It literally says duvet day in the diary, because I recognize I would, and like Lack was saying, filling your cup. So I'd say I'm doing similar stuff, but it's in different proportions. The slices of the pie have changed, and coming up to the end of this month, it's going to be time to sit down and go, right, what do I have the capacity for, and where do I think my time and energy will best serve people? So that's a conversation to come.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it's, just sharing on how what you're doing is essentially networking combined with the meetings, but because we don't have to travel, it's like another way of doing it in a more efficient way. But it's also then got you to rethink about your values, your priorities, about where you want to actually be putting your time and get you more focused on that, right? And I think that's so cool.
And let's not even mention Clubhouse, because I can't tell you how many hours have now gone into doing Clubhouse rooms on mental health and people pinging me in. Last night I was doing a Clubhouse room until 2:22 a.m. Because a guy in Australia heard me in another room and said, we're going to do this thing. Can you come and talk a bit about mental health? And I said, hey, yeah, what time? And then I went, hold on, what time zone are you in? And he said, I'm in Sydney, Australia. I'm like, oh man, that's midnight for me. And I was there till 2:30 a.m. talking about mental health. So I haven't even factored that in, but that's almost like playtime stuff on the side. But yeah, it's definitely going to be about reprioritizing and just kind of looking at how it all fits together.
I think just being in lockdowns, you kind of lost frame of time as well. Like just on computer, just going to different places to some degree. Yeah, you using language of Clubhouse. Lex, if you want to chime in here, go for it, Lex.
I'll say I'm not on Clubhouse, okay, and purely because I moved away from Apple phones, iPhone. So
ouch.
Is that one of your adaptations? Like, the technology.
Well, the technological change, really, after being an early adopter of the iPod, the original iPod, that is, ever since, I've been bought into the Apple lifestyle. But the reasons purely to move away from Apple were purely because of the way Apple were demising their phones. There was nothing wrong with my phone. It just stopped working after an upgrade. And they did that on purpose, and they got sued for it as well. So not happy about that. But anyway, point is, not on Clubhouse, and I know that it's a fantastic platform to share. But there's the thing. What's happened after the pandemic is there have been people, influencers, that have been seeking specialists to talk about certain subjects, to share about certain subjects. And I must admit, there's been no shortage of platforms to share on, invitations to speak on platforms like this, for instance, and to share with the community that's following Digital Rapport and other similar groups with different origins. So origins that are related to the kind of work I do, whether it's in fitness, whether it's in martial arts, whether it's in mental health.
You had a good opportunity recently to do a JV with someone, isn't it? Like you managed to adapt in the way you got into another audience, basically, by partnering up with someone.
That's right. So that there's an opportunity to do a 6-week challenge. And quite interestingly enough, a TV star that wanted to do work, all of TV stroke fitness celebrity that wanted to do a 6-week challenge and looking for something new. And the beauty of it, and I'm humbled and grateful that they selected or headhunted me. And the reason for that was because I've always put a massive focus on the body, the mind, and the spirit. I've always thought that actually, if I want to break it down a bit more, the body, the mind, the emotion, and the spirit. And if you just focus on the body, you're only going to be a quarter of a martial artist. Martial art covers all of that, and there's such a lack of focus on those other 3 segments that that was the reason why they wanted me. And like Marilyn said, that the initial proposal was piecework. And I said, no, mate, I don't think so. You're wanting, 2 decades, almost 2 decades worth of experience for piecework. I don't think so. And I said, if you want something, we're going to do it in partnership. It's a collab. And if you want a collab, you've got to honor the skill that I'm going to bring, the experience that I'm going to bring, the knowledge that I'm going to bring, the wisdom that I'm going to bring, and we'll do it that way. And do you know what? It was no debate. It was recognized, and I'll be honest with you, the rest is history, and it's going wonderfully. It's done in an honorable way. I always say, if you're going to do something, do it in a win-win situation. And it's a win-win situation. So these are the kind of beautiful things that are happening. There's always opportunity if you stay positive, if you're open to receive these things. But if you, in your mind's eye, say to yourself that this is not going to happen, it won't happen. Like Marilyn mentioned earlier on, she had a message that, share remote working, right? Your unconscious, intuitive self, your subtle body is always listening, right? You just have to tap into your subtle body. And if you don't, you're going to miss all this cosmic wisdom. This is going to go straight over your heads, right? And there's people that understand this, and there's people that are going to say, hey, you're talking shit, right? But it's okay. It doesn't matter, right? Whether you do, you don't, either way, you're right, as Henry Ford said. But key thing is, there is something happening because there are people that are doing this. And there's a lot of evidence out there. But, as I say, just because you don't have evidence for something, it doesn't mean the evidence for that not happening, existing, doesn't exist, right? It's down to the individual to have an expansive mindset to make things happen. And that really starts with the self. You've got to have not even a belief, just a complete trust and surrender that if you want to achieve something, that you're able to do it, and you'll attract it. And this is, people say it's a law of attraction. Call it what you want to call it. It doesn't matter, right? But remember, with the law of attraction, people give up the moment they feel negative emotion. Negativity is part of the whole thing. Negative, you get battery, you've got one side's positive, one side's negative, right? Every cell of your body has got positive and negative. We are positive and negative. We can't exist just on positivity. We won't exist otherwise, right? You have to have both sides. So this is a symbiotic relationship between both. The degree to which both manifest themselves is always changing. Sometimes it's more positive, sometimes it's more negative, right? And it's constantly changing. The yin yang is basically depicting that motion. And the way I like to say, talk about yin yang is, a yin yang is like the moon. Right?
Perfect adaptability, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the moon, right? So you got a full moon, right? The moon is fully lit, right? And then it starts to wane, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it becomes a new moon, which means it's completely shadowed, right? And you can't see it, right? You might be able to see it, but it's not glowing back at you. And then slowly it starts to wax again, so it starts to come up, so it becomes a full moon again, right? That's the energetic interplay that's always happening.
Different cycles that we go through for adapting that, isn't it?
So we just got to be open, receptive to that.
Thank you for sharing on that. Suki, was there anything you wanted to say in regards to adapting? And then what we'll do, we'll quickly go into just quick kind of tips and softwares that you find quite useful, and then we'll just close it off after that, because I'm just a bit conscious of the time and really appreciate everyone you sharing. Yes, thank you for sharing on that, Lex. This is amazing about how, the adaptability side of it. Suki, do you want to just...
Yeah, adaptability as an independent. I'll take it slightly differently in a conversation. I think as a business adaptation, I'll go into the business adaptation if I may. Really, it's one of the key things that I spoke about way back in last year. I mean, come on, there's been so much change. I mean, we've been online, we've been speaking, and it's the whole world has completely changed. I mean, yesterday I was speaking to somebody in New Zealand in the morning, and it just goes on and on and on. Every day, I think this week I was in New Zealand, Australia. I had somebody coming in from Africa. Our business boardrooms, we have people coming from America, from Kenya, from UK. I mean, you can't get that in a room. You just can't do that anymore. So I am always been very acceptant for technology. That was part of my business. In the mid noughties, early noughties actually, 2002, 2001, late 1999, we started investing heavily in the infrastructure of online, even though not knowing exactly what it was going to be. And that wasn't headed by myself, that was headed by my brother. It was his vision and understanding, and saying that we needed specifically to go into this online facilitation. And I would say, business is not going to change. You need to buy a stock, you need to sell the stock, you need a retail facilitation, you need to go. And I wasn't actually aware of the .com possibilities. So it doesn't matter. It's not about ego. It can be, but it's not about ego really. Who's right, who's wrong? Nobody knows. All it is that you've got to believe in whatever decision you've made. Align yourself with it. You know what was just said a moment ago, Henry Ford. Lax, you said it there very clearly. What I believe, if you believe you can, if you believe you can't, you're right. Whichever you believe, I always say that whatever you believe is true, and that's the reality we've got to live with. So, if you have the inkling, what Marilyn had way back, in 2019, thinking about 2020, and then writing 100 articles post that period, that's another level of thinking. Now, that's because most of us in this room are what we classify as teachers, lecturers, gurus, whatever you want to think about it. Now, but the key here is that we're nothing special. All of us, and each and every one of us, has just focused our time and effort into creating a connection with self, so that we can actually understand and be much more resonant with grounding. So the thing I would say within business, I mean, I'm absolutely acceptant of technology movements. If I hadn't, I just sort of thought originally, there's nothing going to come with this online internet stuff. And I let my brother get on with it. He then created a whole online sales position. No one bought anything online. So that's why I didn't have the value in it. Do you understand? Until 2002, when the UK started investing money in the infrastructure of actually the internet protocol. So until that started happening, we weren't selling anything online. The best we got was an email. Can you tell me about this? And in those days, it was clunky. You'd send an email to somebody about a product. Why didn't you just pick the phone up? It was a very ancient. Why technology is made to make things quicker, easier, more efficient, not more complicated. And if it makes it more complicated, it doesn't work. So we're talking about principles of, in the earlier days of adaptations of internet, it was clunky. It was making things worse. It was making it harder. So that's why nobody didn't really adopt it. They adapted to it when it became easy to use, when it actually became less clicks, much more efficient to press a few buttons and it arrived at your house. That kind of scenario. So I would say basically, look, when was any day or any year of your life the same? That's the only thing I've got to say. It was never the same. It never will be the same. It's always changing. It's always evolving. And if you're in business, let's just bring it into business context. If you're in business and you think your business is going to be the same as it was yesterday or even last year, any year, I hark everybody. You look at 2019. Was 2019 the same as 2018? Anybody? And the answer is no, because we're always evolving. So the thing is, this is just a different kind of evolution. And I believe it's systemized the world in accepting VoIP in a different way. I mean, how right was Microsoft? The original investors, they're the ones who really, really realized. I mean, come on, they bought, I think way back, was it 2006, 2007? No, 2008. They purchased Skype. Obviously, they ripped it apart and threw it else and left it sat there as an old product now. Teams has taken the limelight. But the point I'm trying to say is that they took VoIP because they have IP infrastructural understanding. They've got the software engineering. They've got Bing. They know what people are searching for, what's happening, and where it's going. So they bought it for something like 5.4 billion. And people are thinking, you numpties, you just paid billions of pounds for something that's just an IP technology. And in one whole year, they were worth 14.9 billion. Do you think they had their finger on the pulse? The answer is yes. And everybody else has just followed. So my question to yourself is very, very simply, when was any year the same? And if your business is not evolving and you're not adapting to a new norm, let's just use that cliched word, then you're not in business, are you? You're just trying to live an ancient dream, something that's stale. You should always be reinventing yourself every single day. I can't tell you that today is going to be the same as yesterday. In fact, I'm thinking today's already changed. What a great platform to be sitting there talking to each other. I couldn't have made it over to a physical room to do an interview. Can you imagine how much time, harking back to what Lax and Marilyn were talking about, how much time it takes to set up a room like this? How much time? Oh, let's get the lightings wrong. The microphone. Is the microphone working? Yeah, is it working? All of that sort of shebang. But what do? We come on in minutes. Yeah. Sometimes we have our Zoom clothes on. I don't actually, but our Zoom tops on, and that's it. And all of a sudden, we deliver, and the world is listening. The world's listening. What an amazing time we're living in. Now, this is not taking away from the people who've been affected by this lockdown and mental health and stuff. And I'm not talking about that because I don't want to go down there right today. Today, the topic for me was about what adaptations have been made. Well, I've open-armedly respected and adopted new technology, and I am so grateful for it. It has changed. We are completely flying. I think every single week I'm doing at least 3 to 5 keynotes with organizations who are paying for my time, universities, because they're desperate right now. There's nothing happening. They can't convivially connect people together. So you're sitting there with this screen through Teams delivering, but they need more people. I have probably been approached by, and I care not to give numbers because I can't remember how many they've been through. Every single month I'm speaking with a new university somewhere along the line, and we're delivering a brand new business growth accelerator adapted for students, MBAs, PhDs, whatever it is, we just adapt it for them. So that would never have happened because I wouldn't have had the time to travel there to make that happen. It's instant, and I am so grateful for IP technology. And I'm just so looking forward to the future and how this is going to be a permanent feature of life, which it will do. And I'm just looking forward to the next stage when we look at the phase of when we have 3D, when we actually been able to project at lower cost instead of £150,000 for a projection system that delivers you 3D. So, I've got a very good friend of mine and client who's mastered virtual. He's actually created an actual platform where it's completely virtual. And all you do is you turn up there and you deliver, and it's awesome. It was awesome. The whole thing, he's got maybe 50 big panels all around you, and you can see individual Zoom feeds. If like we're on 4 now, you'd have one whole 50-inch OLED just showing your face. So you can physically look at a room as though it's in a room. That is awesome. So that's the way I think we're going. And I don't believe it's a diminishing return. I believe this is a ascending return, and I think there's no return, and I don't want to go back to how it was before, to be honest. So that's my personal opinion in that way. So when we do the tips round, I'll just start off with a tip if you don't mind. The tips, key things, and Marilyn touched on it. It is about reassessment. I spoke mid last year at a university with reference to time schedule, and this was actually the top lecturers. They were having the problem themselves, and I'm not going to mention the names of the universities, but trust me, the biggest collegiates are having a problem with managing their world right now. It is not the same. There's no support. The structure's not there. They just can't deliver. The word that was thrown around was it's become 2D education. Now, I don't know what that actually means, but that's a very intellectual conversation. So what I would suggest very strongly is to ensure that you are still connecting with human beings, not necessarily outside of your bubbles, and I'm not suggesting defy the current rulings, but connect with real human beings, because it is so important to have physical communication. Okay, if you're doing the fist bump or the elbow bump, whatever it is, one day it'll turn into hugs again, I'm sure, but you have to be physically out there. You do need to nurture all aspects of your life. That means self. We wrote some years ago a principle which is basically around 70-20-10. So 70% of my time is on my business activity, for example, 20% on my family, 10% of my me time. That me time has become so important exactly what Marilyn did. She readjusted her life and said, I'm not going to do those other things anymore because I'm going to go mental. And my cap won't get full, as Lack says. The reality is that if you can not forget the 10%, my highest tip is to ensure that you are still doing things for yourself. And if you live within a family like I do, where there's multiple people there, ensure that each one of those people are doing something for themselves as well. So we've even internally relaxed our relationship between my kids. I think I mentioned it in one of the previous podcasts with yourself, Jatinder, where I'm not so disciplined on kids' mobile phone, switch off, music out your ears, that kind of thing, because I'm allowing them to have their own freedoms as well. So that's just some of the things that they need to have, that 10% of nurture of self. They go out for bike rides, they chat as siblings, but they're also on a weekly basis, would you believe, we have a family Zoom. So all of our extended family members, in our family, we've had an actual Zoom wedding. There's been a number of Zoom funerals, and so much has been changing. So I think it's moving in a good direction. But my big key tip, not on business levels, but on a personal level, is don't forget yourself. That means make sure you nurture yourself to ensure that you're there as a strengthened individual for everybody else. That's it.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, thank you for sharing those tips. And we'll go over to Marilyn and then finish off with Lax in regards to just some of the tips you want to share. So Marilyn, what would you like to add so people get something useful as well?
Well, number one, in terms of, first thing, at Suki, if you meet organizations who need someone to help them with structure, remote working, creating connection and bringing learning to life, and they're paying, please feel free to give them my details.
You don't even ask. You don't even need to ask about that, do you, now, Marilyn? You know it's going to
know where to find me.
Absolutely.
Now, in terms of one of my tips, I need to stand up for this one. I have got what we call pajamas, and I've got house PJs and my house pajamas. So after I've got showered and everything, if I know it's going to be a day where I'm going to be online, my comfort is paramount. So I don't know if you can see my leg there, but these are my house PJs.
I've seen them before.
Exactly. They just feel so wonderful on the skin. So it's a lovely kinesthetic experience. And if I could get my foot higher, which we won't do now, this is not a ballet class, I'm wearing my fluffy booties as well, because I need to make sure that if I am going to be in this space, I need to be absolutely comfortable. I also just want to show you this. Lack mentioned it.
Yeah.
So it still looks sleek.
Yeah, timeless.
Do you know something? Sorry, Marilyn, I'm going to interject 1 second there. If you show that now, some people think that's a vintage product. They don't even know what a cassette is or an 8-track.
I know.
So you're going to show them this. Oh my God, that's so old.
But it still feels and looks brilliant. So hats off to Steve Jobs, because we started off with him about not reinventing the wheel. But in terms of tips, and you're also asking about technology earlier, one of the pieces of technology that I'm so glad I invested in was my webinar platform, because it allows me to deliver a workshop. I can deliver handouts. So at one point I can say, so now we're all going to do the perfectionist script for self-defeat. I can click a button, the handout appears on everyone's desktop and they can download it and open it. We can do polls, all of those sorts of things. So I'd say that's been one of the best things I've done is kind of have robust technology for doing that. And I would definitely say that looking after yourself is paramount. Now, with a lot of the Zoom meetings I do, I have my camera switched off, because, seeing they're on alert for 15 hours, that's too much for me. Don't want to be doing that, because not everybody's teaching in a way that uses the multiple intelligences. They're not using all of the learning styles. It's just one style of delivery. So oftentimes my camera's off. I'm listening, but I might be doing some educational kinesiology, might be stretching, might be doing my hard breathing just to get my energy going. And so I'm present, but I'm not going to be like, so it's like, no. So now I'm having to really think about what will I need to do to be able to be present, to deliver, and make sure that when I do kind of interject, it's on point. And I know that after all of those hours of sitting, I did a call last night with the mayor, and we finished at, I don't know, 9:30 or something like that. That's a long day. So my camera was off for the majority of time, because I was stretching and, doing all my thing, and I was eating because it was late. I needed food, but I'm still present. So, and in terms of the software, I use Big Marker for that. I do have an affiliate link in terms of new forms of income. If anyone wants to sign up, use my link. But yeah, Big Marker is the platform that I use for delivering my webinars, and they're an enterprise level, so it's not your usual, it's a different price point to what you might expect with Zoom, but it's definitely been worth it in terms of that. So yeah, that's a few of my tips. Be comfortable, do what you need to do for yourself, and if you know where your business is going, invest in the technology which will support you with that. And I've probably looked at 100 different pieces of technology to do the various things that I want to do, and then whittled it down to the ones that I think are going to really work for me and deliver for my clients. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for sharing that. Lex, do you want to add any of your tips or softwares that you're using that you think is quite resourceful?
Not so much tips and software. What I'd say is I'm a bit like Suki in the sense that going forwards, post-pandemic, I think we're looking at a hybrid existence from pre-COVID times and during COVID times. So I think the organizations that will take a hybrid approach are the ones that are going to be desirable to work for instance, are going to be the ones that are going to be desirable, do desirable business, and the ones that are going to be able to reach people on their terms. And those terms are going to change because people are liking it from home. There's a lot that don't. And the reasons why people don't like it from home is because mainly, from my own experience in the martial arts world, is they don't have the space, they don't have the privacy, okay, or they don't want to stare into a camera, okay. They're kind of the main reasons, other than affordability, right? So I think there is going to always be a marketplace for that. One of the things that we've noticed from doing the 6-week challenges, there's a lot of people that want to do and continue these lessons online via Zoom, for instance, because they wouldn't have access to it otherwise. They actually have now got access and availability to resources that weren't available to them pre-COVID. And the reason for that is because nobody was doing it online. You had to go somewhere to do it. And, we're talking about, young mothers, for instance, right? And fathers as well. People that can't leave the house because they're carers, whatever it might be. The people that have to stay at home for a reason, especially in evening times or certain times of the day. So I think there's going to be ways that we can serve a whole new genre and a whole new community needs based on the way things are changing. So I think we should look forward to that. I think you need to adapt to what's happening to make the most of it. And it's again, it's one of those things as which aspect of you are you feeding, the servitude, the survival side of things. And if you do go that way, the servitude way, you'll actually, I think it'll be healthy for you to do that, because you'll open up a whole bunch of different ways in which to live life fully to its maximum potential. And I think that's the beauty of what's happening. When something like this happens, I'm also a firm believer that there's a divine reason why something like this is happening. And I know that there's a lot of lives that have been lost. And again, send my deepest condolences to anybody that's lost loved ones. I too have lost loved ones as well, and I don't think anybody doesn't know anybody that hasn't. So it's a consequence of the virus. There's nothing that we could do about that other than try and be safe and healthy, and adhere to the protocols best we can to get through this. But we need to do it together as one family, because this is a pandemic, is global. That's what pandemic means. So we have to tackle it as a global family. And I think there is a beauty within that, is to realize that we need to act together. We can't act separately. And the way life changes going forward is going to be literally life changing, right, in the way we do things and the way luckily we've got technology to support us. If we didn't have technology, there would be businesses that would have totally gone bankrupt.
Absolutely.
And so on. So, they're in a weird but wonderful way. We're lucky that it's happening due to a technological era. So my advice is adapt and make the best of the situation. Keep a positive lens on, and stay safe and happy. And the futures, whatever happens now is happening for a reason. Whether you see that or not right now, it doesn't matter. It's when you get further down the line and you look back, you'll be able to join the dots. In the meantime, persevere and stay together. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Lex. Thank you. And I just wanted to add a few things like what you said about technology. I mean, one of the things we set up, myself and Suki, we were working on something called Feel Good Friday, where I think we're coming to like week 44 or something at the point of this recording. And it was basically just that, we just create the Zoom platform, just put it together, invited people along, and just said, look, just come along, share, be part of this group. Whatever's on your mind, let's talk about it. Let's have conversations around it. And that was a really fantastic thing that I think has helped a lot of people just being a part of that. So, thank you guys for sharing on that. And just some other tips I wanted to share was like what I found useful during this time was I think three things which I found for myself was that one, I managed to get what we call a scheduling system in place, right? Because one of the things, the challenges I had was when I'm having conversation with clients, so they, the time, when can we book a time, when can we chat? There's this lot back and forth stuff, which wasn't really efficient. So what I did was, based on some advice from Suki in regards to how to manage that, I create some time, and then I created a scheduling software, some of you use called Salesmaster Hub, which I allocate the time, create a link, share that with all my clients. I said, anytime you want to book a call with me, just follow this link. And now this is going, connect with my calendar and able to get some slot with me, which saves that back and forth time, which is really cool. The other thing was having a ticketing system, because having emails go back and forth, I found that to be very challenging. So having a ticketing system where everything's in one place and you can just go through it has been fantastic. And then I love the amazing Evernote. Evernote is just such a fantastic piece of software, which I highly recommend to everyone. And I appreciate everyone. I hope you guys have had tips. I'm just a bit conscious of the time. I really, really appreciate you guys sharing. And there's a lot of information in there, and I'm, grateful for it. So thank you for me, and I hope to see you guys next time as well. And I hope the audience takes away a lot from this. So thank you very much, everyone. And signing off.
Thanks, Jatinder.
Oh, good to see you all as usual.
Absolutely.
Pleasure, man. Pleasure.
There's a little clap for you so you can cut it, yeah?
That's right.
Now we can talk rubbish. Yay!